and I'd like to welcome you all to this webinar, first of all. And thank you for your patience, and I hope that all the technical difficulties were on everybody else's side instead of mine. But here on my screen, I am showing you some pictures, and what we're going to talk about tonight is dimensional quilting. Quilting with my decorative quilter is so much fun, and I think many of you have already experienced that, and some of you are interested in it. What we're talking about tonight are two different things, but they go together very well. First is Trapunto, which, if you've ever done that by hand, you will know it is a very complex process and requires a lot of work on the part of the quilter and handwork and cutting the back behind designs and stuffing it to give it even more dimension. And I'm going to show you a method this evening where you can eliminate that handwork, because I'm all about that. And the other thing that makes Trapunto stand out is micro stippling. So here's some pictures, and let's look at it first so we know what we're talking about. This definitely is Trapunto. You see here that these designs have been filled. Well, part of them look like they have. Some of them not so much have been filled in. This one definitely is. And I appreciate, I just Googled this on the internet and pulled up these pictures, and I want to thank Julie Reed, who's the only one who has credit on there for it, but for her beautiful contribution to pictures on the internet. But you see the circles here and the feathers, and then in the background stitches are close together, which helps to make the puffy part of it pop. Now, I don't know if this right here is Trapunto or not, but the stippling behind it certainly makes it pop out. I've got a couple of more pictures here. And this one I think is really interesting. I've got to go back to this website because I think the picture's just gorgeous. And obviously it's done machine quilting of some type because she's got it marked. So it's probably either an arm quilter or maybe one of those people that really know how to do machine quilting by hand. I don't have the coordination for that, which is why I love my decorative quilter. But here you see stitchandtherapy.blogspot.com. You see how this stands out. Now, I don't know if this is Trapunto or not, but you see where the smaller, closer together, the stippling is here, and then there's some swirls here, there's some pebbling here, and some other swirls here, and then McTavishing, which I just think is gorgeous, up here at the top. But you see how the smaller it is, the more it makes that thinner design just pop. And this one, I think, is an awesome example. See how teeny, tiny that stippling is. This is definitely Trapunto. It's stuffed in some way, whether it's layers of batting that were cut away or stuffed from the back. I'm not really sure. But then the micro stippling feathers out into a little bit larger stippling. But it really makes it pop. That's one of the things that we want to talk about with dimension. Now, one of the things that I want you to know is you are going to get, through the magic of the internet, and I forgot to ask, but Nancy will tell us before we're done, I think you will get a link to a download where you can download 3 different designs we're going to give you tonight, as well as instructions on how to do them and software instructions. So this will be very fun. Now, let me get out of that, and let's go into, first off, I think it would be easier to show you how it's sewn, and then go back and describe the process of creating it. This is the Trapunto coaster. So this is an easy thing to do. We've taken a design from my decorative quilter, the Center Star design, and we've added some stitches behind it to compact the batting, so it makes the Trapunto part stand out a little bit more. And this is so simple to do in the hoop. Let's go through and look how it's done, and then we'll explore the software angles of that. And this is actually the PDF that you're going to get on how you put it together, so don't worry about taking notes. But the way that the process works is first, we are just using tearaway stabilizer. You could do wet and gone stabilizer if you want to, put a little water on a Q-tip around the edge of the design. When you're done, you can do that. But the tearaway, since our tearaway tears so clean, is a great thing to use for it. And this is the first color. The first color is actually, go back a minute. You see, it's actually the star design without the little loopy things on the end. So that's the first thing that we're stitching. And it's basically a placement line for our Trapunto batting. Then we're going to lay down, sorry, I'm scrolling up and down here, 3 pieces of batting. And the one I recommend, of course, is the Floriani Quilted Soft Polyester. It's very lofty. It's so soft, but it gives you that beautiful loft. And I just put 3 pieces of it, that will fit over this area. So you've got that to reference. And you can take it down at the corners. And then we stitch after we cover it. And I recommend, this one isn't, but I recommend in the other one to cover it with water-soluble stabilizer because it holds the batting down because you're getting a lot of loft there. So you want the water-soluble stabilizer to keep your foot from catching any of the fibers, and it really helps create a nice effect. So the next thing you do is you stitch it down. First you stitch your placement, then you stitch it down. Then the next thing is to cut that away. Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. Well, actually the next thing is to cut it away, and it tells you that in the instructions. Before we go to step 3, you will have cut away the batting around this star design that's in the center. Now, here's the fun thing. You can do this a couple of different ways. I will do it sometimes with my scissors, and I love my Floriani scissors. The micro tip points are really good for this because I can get in and get really close to that stitching without cutting through it. However, don't fret. If you cut through one of those stitches that holds the batting down, it's still going to work. Other thing you can do that's really fun is to take if you're using polyester batting, of course, is to take your heat cutting tool and you can zip around this little design in no time and cut away all that batting. And then I put it in the stash with all my other batting pieces, so when I go to have something, I've got them. But the heat cutting tool works great as long as you're using polyester batting. If you're using cotton batting, not so much. You'll need to use scissors for that. Our next step is to take the next color, which is color number 3. It's a circle. What this is our placement line for where we're going to next put over the top of it a piece of regular, like bamboo batting or our embroidery batting, any batting that you want the rest of the design to be that loft. We have our loft built up with the star, and then you're going to put another piece of batting and your top fabric over it, and the circle tells you how big it needs to be, and then you stitch color number 5, where you change the thread for the background stitches if you want to, stitch color number 5, and this will stitch that circle and hold the fabric down. This stitches all of the background design. Now, this is one way to do what you see in the picture here. It stitches the circles around it. It holds that down to the tearaway stabilizer. And it gives you that nice loft in the middle from the 3 layers of polyester, quilted soft polyester batting. Next, we're going to change colors. Now, when you get your designs, remember, every one of those steps has a different color. That doesn't mean you need to change your thread. Only the thread that shows is what you really need to change so that you see the color you want. In this case, I'm using the same thread on the background and the top because I just wanted a subtle look. We'll show you something different in a minute. So we stitched the circle to hold everything down. Let's go back up, sorry. And then we stitched the background stitches around the design. Then the next thing is we change our thread for the design if you want to, or you can use the same thread as I did in this example. So I've already gotten all my little circles stitched down around it, and then I stitched the design in the center. Okay, moving on, color number 7. At this point, I remove my hoop from the machine and I do a little bit of trimming. I'm going to, well, first of all, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to put some fabric on the back so that my coaster has a backing. And at this point, my bobbin thread will show. So if I want matching bobbin thread, I'm going to change it at this point. And then we turn my hoop to the machine, and it is going to stitch color number 7, which is the circle and an outline of my center design. This will show on the back of my coaster, but none of the other stitching will. So at this point, I can remove my hoop from the machine. I trim away the excess fabric, both on the top and on the bottom of my hoop. Return my hoop to the machine. And be careful there when you trim it away that, you don't push it or dislodge it. And you could color sort the design if you're going to do multiple ones in a hoop so that you stitch down everything and then you trim everything at the same time. Then once everything is trimmed, like this picture shows the back of the coaster design, then we stitch color number 8, the final color, in the same color of thread, or a different one if you want, which is a satin stitch around the perimeter of the coaster. Now, since we stitched this on tearaway stabilizer, with the chairs cleanly in every direction, or button-gone stabilizer, which is easy to get rid of with just a Q-tip and water, or spritz it a little and it'll go away. This will now be the outer edge of our coaster, this nice, pretty satin stitch. So it's kind of like a patch that's two-sided and reversible. It's very easy to do. Again, you can load multiples of these in your hoop and stitch them. So, Nancy, are you still there? Do we have any questions at this point?
We do. We actually have a question from Miss Sandra Ludwig, and the question is, what if I want to put micro stippling around an embroidery design?
Oh, that's a very good question. You see here where we put this micro stippling or a close up. This is much closer together than I would want to stitch on a quilt to make that center pop out. If we were to put micro stippling on a quilt design, let me show you how that's done. I'm in my decorative quilter now. I'm going to open up a new file. And let's go over, and everybody needs to send DJ a thank you note that we now have the design library in my decorative quilter because it makes it so much easier to get our design. Let's say I want to, let me take this snowflake. I'm going to pull it in. And this design we see up here at the top is about 3.5 by a little over 3.5 inches. And that's good for a coaster, or if I'm going to put this in a quilt. So I have my design here in the software, okay? Now, if I want to make this into a coaster, all I have to do is simply come in and create, we can do a rectangle. Create a rectangle around this. If I hold by clicking on artwork, we selected the rectangle. And then if I hold my control key down, I'm going to get an exact square. And that's our artwork. Since I brought this in from the design library, this design is already grouped, and I love that. I'm going to combine the two together or select both of them and center that design. Now, in this design, just like in the design that we did from our embellishments, which is in your instructions, all I have to do is select it, right-click, after I've created my box or circle or quilt block or whatever you want, and select Create Outline. Now, the distance away from the design, this could be a snowflake, it could be any design you want. It could be one of our adorable Precious Moments Christmas designs or any other design that you want to put on a quilt. When I create an outline, I have an option of the distance to create that outline from the outer edge of this design. In this case, I'm going to make it let's make it pretty close. I'm going to do 0.4 inches. Now, I do have my default set in inches, not in millimeters, and you can go to the manual or the help files to see how to change that. I think in inches. I don't think in millimeters. So some of you may be different, and that's perfectly okay. I do not ever hold that against you. It's just this is how I think. So I want it 0.4 inches. And I say OK. Now, what happens? Oh, sorry. Let's undo that. Control V. Not 0.4 inches. I want to create an outline again. I want it to be 0.04 inches. Okay, just different. Not almost half an inch. You know, half of a tenth of an inch. That makes sense. And click OK. Now, if we look at this design up close, you see where the red is. No, even put that in 3D. So there's my design, and then the blue around it is my outline. So you can undo this and redo it until you get your outline exactly where you want it. But the very simple thing to do at this point is to come back over, and we're going to switch back to our sequence view from our design library. And I'm going to select this right here because these are both my artwork. This is my design, which is a lot of different run stitches, as you can see. So I just want this color, the blue outline and my blue square. And I'm going to combine them. Now, if you have watched or from the other webinars, you'll know that now this line that outlines my snowflake and the line around here are now combined. So it sees that blank area in between them as one object. All right? So at this point, look at our sequence here and see what that looks like. Collapse it by right-clicking and saying collapse all. Okay. So we have our snowflake. We have our outline and our snowflake. That's kind of weird. Well, let's see what happens. I'm going to select the blue, which is our outline, and the square, and then we'll just convert that to a stipple stitch by clicking on our stippling. And this is the way you would do it with any design that you're putting out there. Now, this stippling, if we scan back a little bit and look at it, this stippling is pretty big. This isn't really emphasizing our snowflake at all. So if we select that, and we come over here to our stippling properties, we can change our density, which is the distance between the rows of stitching, to a smaller number. In this case, we'll make it 2 millimeters, which I know is pretty small. And click Apply. Okay, so now that's put it much closer together. Then we can also, you see how jagged this is? We can come in and we can change our stitch length to 2 millimeters as well, and we'll get a little bit smoother looking stippling. So we can take any design and put stippling around it. another document in, another file, design. Let's see. We'll go to my designs and the signature design collection. And we'll go to a butterfly, majestic wings. And select a design, open it. Okay. So now I have a butterfly here. The same thing works with the butterfly as it did with the other one. I simply create something around it. I have to have an artwork around it, whether it's a circle, ellipse, a square, triangle, whatever you want to. If you're going to put it in a quilt or if you're just going to do it on something else, and create that. Block, select it. In this case, I didn't hold my control key down, so it's a different size. We're going to make this 6 by 6. So I'm going to deselect, maintain aspect ratio, and just make it 6 inches. What is this? 6 by 6. And click apply. Okay. Now I have my butterfly and my box. I did not, since it wasn't brought in from the design library, I do want to group it so it stays together when I center it. And I may even want to rotate this design. I could do that if I want and make it, rotated this way. And then by simply selecting, holding down the control key and clicking A, I've selected everything. I want to align it vertically and horizontally. Now my butterfly in the mathematical center of the block. I select my butterfly, right click, and here we are with outline. One of the easiest ways, I had a problem when we first got all these neat new features between outline and border. An outline can go outside or inside whatever object you have selected. In this case, I'm outside by, let's do this 0.02 inches. And click OK. And it creates an artwork outline, which if we scroll in, you can see it there. I select those two again and combine them. They become one element, which means what is in between the two of them is now your background. Then, and select that and convert it to any type of texture, stippling, or advanced stippling. And again, you have control over the sizes of these. So, let's use butterfly stippling for the butterfly. And you can click OK, and it will fill that in. Now, in this case, this isn't micro stippling because my pattern length is 15 millimeters. But I can make that much smaller so that it makes that butterfly pop by making that, let's do 7 millimeters. We'll cut it a little more than half inside. And now that's more micro stippling. You can, if you look at this in 3D, you will see, that's a pretty busy background. And even though we're not making the butterfly trapunto, with the micro stippling, what you can do here is stitch your design on fabric and then float underneath it a layer of batting and a backing. And then do your micro stippling. And that will pull it down, and the butterfly will still be more dimensional because it's not been stitched through the batting. So you'll have more dimension that way. So you can do that with any design you like. All right.
That's amazing, Miss Tamara. You make it look so easy.
It is
in the program. Well, it's amazing at all the things that you've covered in just a few minutes on just that one particular element and feature of the program itself. I do have another quick question for you before we move on.
Okay.
And Mary White has asked us which layers need water-soluble topping?
Oh, that's a very good question, Mary. Let me show you. And let's go back to this is another one of the designs that you're going to get. This is a trellis, Trapunto. And this design, you actually have two versions. This one is the regular stippling, and then you also get one with the same design as this trellis in the background, but micro stippled, which makes that design pop even more. Here's where I use water-soluble topping. Again, here's the first design, and we're stitching color number 1, the Trapunto placement line. And this is a little bit different. Actually, let's back up a little bit. Let me go back to quilting and open up a new page. And let me show you exactly how the layers of the Trapunto were done, because this is where the water-soluble stabilizer comes in. First of all, we click a new page. Now, we can go into any of our embellishments and select an embellishment. In this case, I selected crisscross. Let's click on the plus sign next to it to show all the options. And I selected the first one, this design right here, the block circle. Now, as you know, or you may not know, but you should know, that with all of our embellishment designs, you look over here, they come with an outline and a regular stitching design. Let's look at that in 3D to make it a little clearer. So I have an outline here, that artwork, and then the run stitches that actually create that design like we have in the Trapunto poster. The first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of this outline because that's not the outline I'm going to be using. So if I select it or right-click on it, I can click delete or use the delete key. So now all I have is the design. When I click on it, then I can create an outline. This time we're going to do the outline a little bit different to create the Trapunto. When I create an outline, instead of it being on the outside of the design, I'm going to select inside. And I'm going to make that go inside of the design just a skosh. In my family, I think that translates to 0.02 inches, just a little bit. We just want that outline a little bit inside. Okay, so now you see where that outline is. Highlight it so you can see the color a little bit better. We'll switch it to okay. So here's my red inside of the other one. The reason I do that is for the Trapunto creation. First of all, this is what I want to stitch first. I want this to be my placement line. You know, when we went through the steps, this is my placement line for the batting. I just am going to have tearaway stabilizer or wet and gun stabilizer hoop, and this I need to change to run stitch. So it'll just stitch on my stabilizer and let me know what what I need to cover for that for the Trapunto. Then I lay down 3 layers of wet and gone, the quilted soft polyester batting on top of that. And at this point, it's a good idea after in the stitching process, you would want to lay down your water-soluble topping over that to keep the foot from catching in the fibers. And once you wash it, it goes away and it lets that puff up even more. So use your water-soluble there. But now we have our run stitch. If I turn this off, we're going to see this is exactly what we stitched the first time on that stabilizer. And we also want to tack down the batting. So I'm going to select this again. I can right-click and say copy, then right-click and last one I created is what's highlighted. You can kind of see over here. And I'm going to change that to color 3 simply by right-clicking on it, because I want the machine to stop between. Now, if you have a multi-needle machine, you may need to put in a stop there, depending on how your machine is set up and whether it reads the color changes as a stop or not. So I have 2 run stitches, and I'm going to move my design, move my design down below that. Now, there's a couple of ways I can do that. You can send it back or whatever, but it's all written out in your instructions. So don't quit. You've got all of this information. So if I turn off everything, we will see the way this is going to stitch. The first one stitches on your stabilizer, so you know where to put your batting for the trapunto. The second stitching line holds that batting down, and you will cover this with water-soluble topping so that the foot doesn't catch on there. Then the next step that we want to do, after we've stitched that down, we're not actually going to stitch this yet, but we had to bring this in so we could see it. The next thing we want to do is create a circle around here. So we're going to use the ellipse. If I hold my Control key down, it's going to make a perfect circle for me. And then I can come over to my sign and make it whatever size I want. I want this to be 3.5 inches on both of them. Since I deselected maintain aspect ratio earlier, I need to select that. And now I've got my circle around it. This would be our next step. I want to take this circle and convert it to run stitches, because this will be the run stitch that we need to stitch down the top layer of fabric with the batting over where we cut out the other stitches. Okay, now that is the next step, but in between there, we've got our design. We're going to take and select that, and I can either drag it back down again, or I can simply come up here and say, click on Move to Front, which stitches it last. Okay, so that'll be the top thing that stitches. All right. Now, the next thing we want to do is then, after that stitches to hold it down, we're going to create our stitching around it. But before we do that, let's select, I'm going to make sure this is grouped. It is. Okay, I can tell by the way it's highlighted up here. And I'm going to select everything by doing a Control A and then align it. So we'll make sure everything's in the middle of our circle so it stitches out nicely. Now the next thing that we want to do is select our design, the quilting design from our embellishment, and we're going to put an outline around that to match the circle so we can get our background stitches. So follow along with me if you will. I want to right click and say Create Outline. This time, instead of it being inside the circle, it's going to be outside, but not quite a tenth of an inch. Let's make it 0.04. So it's close to the design, but not on top of it. And click OK. Oh, let's undo that. Unless I undo that. Let me select it again. Right click, Create Outline. I want it outside. Maybe point. That's the right one. Okay, let's do that again. Click OK. have an artwork outline, and we can connect those. Let's try that again with a different design. I'm going to go to a new file. Did you say something, Ann?
No, but I'm here.
Okay. We maybe have
I do have other questions whenever you're ready.
Oh, okay. What's that? What's the next question? Because this is all outlined in here. And it's just,
Well, the next question is actually from Miss Betty Sims, and she asked us, how do I do Trapunto with other quilting designs and not the embellishment design?
well, let's try one of those. Let me show you how that works. If I go into my design library, I do have other quilting designs that I've collected, over the years. And let's say, I kind of like this design here. I'm going to drag that in. And I like the outline of this. I can select the whole thing. And let's see if we can't do an outline inside of it. Because the inside outline, I'm going to change this to 3.02, point. I can create an outline inside of that. Now, let me go back to my sequence view. If I turn off my design, turn off looking at it. So you see, this is exactly where my Trapunto outline would be. If I turn my design on again, I can see how that's going to outline. And I'm not really sure I like the way that does it there. So part of the process is experimenting. Let's close it. Let's open up a new one. No. Let's open up a new design. And let's look at something else. I'm going to take this butterfly. Now, I can select pieces of this. I can do the whole design. And the design's really pretty cute. This is a design I've acquired or purchased. And let's try this one and create an outline just inside this butterfly. Oh, and I didn't click inside, so again, we undo. Undo, up here at the top, our best friend. Select it, right-click, create outline inside, and do it. We'll be more dramatic so we can see it better and do 0.04. Oh, and I like the way that looks. Using my sequence view, I'm going to turn off the butterfly. Okay, so I'm just going to do the antenna and around the butterfly. That'll be very cute. So that would be my placement. Then I duplicate that for my design. That would be my stitching line. And then I'm going to create around it a rectangle. And I can make that whatever size I want. And select everything by doing Control A, then do a vertical line and a center line, and then combine my artwork. We're not there yet. I'm going to change this one, the square, to color 2. I still have to get an outline around my design to do the Trapunto around it, so I select that. Let's move in where we can see everything. Select the design, right-click. This time I want the outline to be outside of it. And we'll make it 0.08 inches. Okay, that's the way it's supposed to work. And then I select my outline and my square and combine them. Change that to stippling or advanced stippling. Any type of fill stitch that you have up here. It could even be a shape. And make it design, which I will change the artwork to a run stitch, repeat that, and you see how that works. I'm sorry, this has been a little bit scattered, but you have great instructions and designs that you can use to stitch out and teach you how to do it. What other questions, Nancy, do we have?
Well, the last one, I want to mention something, or just myself ask a question. So if I understand correctly, and I learn something new every time I have the opportunity to be, to participate in these webinars with you, Ms. Tamara. So not only do you have the thousands of creative options within My Decorative Quilter itself from a design standpoint, but you literally can bring in another design from that you've owned in your stash, as we call it, and bring that in and elaborate and decorate in an unlimited amount of ways.
Absolutely.
That's just amazing. It truly is the art of decorative quilting. The next question that I
have to be a quilt. Okay, go ahead.
It could be anything.
It could be anything.
As I can see it. You're making me want to embroider, Tamara.
Okay, we'll wait for that day.
Well, the next question is, are we going to get new designs each webinar? Because this particular webinar, as we know, has 2 projects and a software lesson that go along with it, which everybody will receive at the end of the webinar.
Yeah.
But that specific question is about design.
Oh, absolutely. Each one of these, and I've got a lot of things planned, but, I love to get feedback from our users and what they want to see and what they want to do. I have so much fun playing with this, and Trapunto with the micro stippling is one of the things that I've really enjoyed doing and playing with. Another one is, and I'm not sure if that's our next one or not, but any webinar that we have that has designs to go along with it or that we can create to something with, absolutely. They will get instructions and design every time we do a webinar. Just depending on what we're doing will depend on what they get, like connecting blocks. There may not be so much designs with that, but they're going to get a lot of tutorials on how to put blocks together if they don't want to do a whole quilt. And I think we're going to even bring in some guest speakers on some of these that are going to be really fun so that they get a different outlook.
Well, each and every webinar is very different. It's built upon itself over the past year, actually since February when we originally launched this program. So the webinars moving forward are very project-based and enable you to show our customers, the potential customers, what the power of My Decorative Quilter truly is. Like in this particular instance, we've covered Trapunto and Micro Stippling with what limited time we have, which is why we thank you so much, Ms. Tamara, for making sure we have all of these projects and software lessons that will provide to everybody at the conclusion of this webinar so that, they can, will all of the people who own My Decorative Quilter have access to these files as well? Absolutely. All of the files. Okay. Just so everyone knows that this evening was we had a late start because of some technical difficulties, and fortunately that was only the first few minutes, and again, we apologize, but all of the materials that we've discussed today, the 2 projects, and also an actual software lesson will be emailed to everybody that has joined us this evening. And even if you don't own My Decorative Quilter, we'll provide you with a way to download a demo version and install on your system and, begin to walk through some of these very things that Ms. Tamara has talked about with us. So kind of like test drive it? Is that what you're saying? Kind of like test drive. That's exactly what that is. And for all of those of you who have not attended the prior webinars, we'll make sure you have the links to those as well, so you can preview, some of the lessons that we've done previously, as we've come up to this particular one, of course, being Trapunto and Micro Stippling. The next sequel, just so everyone knows, The next webinar is going to be on January 28th. And again, Miss Tamara will be hosting this event. And this particular one is called In the Hoop, the sequel. Miss Tamara, would you want to tell us a little bit about what that's going to be about?
Oh, yeah. Our last webinar was on doing stuff in the hoop. And, we just kind of skimmed the surface. And I really want to get more involved with that and give you some more designs that you can use for in the hoop stitching. And, maybe teach you how to put a zipper in the hoop and some things like that that are really fun. One of the things, Nancy, that I've seen with this software, that this software really lends itself to, is it's really more, you're thinking about a whole project instead of just getting a design on, in the commercial world, what they call the substrate, or on fabric or whatever you're stitching. This has a little bit more creativity to it. So it's like, I'm not just stitching, like this butterfly onto fabric. I'm going to make the butterfly pop out, and I'm going to make the background recede, and, I love applique, and we're just going to have so much fun with all of these webinars. But in the hoop, one of my favorites. I love to do everything in the hoop, and we're going to teach you some fun stuff in January. I hope you all have a great holiday time, and please let us know if you have questions, and we'll download these designs. And what else do you have, Miss Nancy?
Well, I just want to reiterate to everyone, again, to make sure you register early for this particular webinar coming up in January. It seems like a long time off, but these webinars are at capacity at 1,000. And in this webinar alone, over 2,000 people registered in the past 48 hours. So, unfortunately, not everyone was able to attend, and we want to make sure that you are able to attend. Please log in early and reserve your spot for that webinar. And again, we will make sure that you get the follow-up email that gives you the download link to preview everything that we've discussed this evening, as well as some of the past webinars that we have hosted over the past year. And for all of you who do not own Floriani's My Decorative Quilter and are considering purchase, please visit your local Floriani dealer. Most of you have provided who that is, your preferred dealer when you registered. If you do not see that this particular dealer carries Floriani embroidery software, just check online. We'll give you a link to make sure you follow up with them and find out the amazing holiday specials that we're creating in bundles in many ways for My Decorative Quilter. It'd be the perfect gift for the holiday, so just make a list and pass that on. Anyway, we thank you so much for joining us this evening, and on behalf of R&K Distributing, Mr. Walter Floriani, and all of us at Team Floriani, we thank you for attending. We will make sure that we address all of your questions either this evening before we close out the webinar or in the next 24 hours. Thank you so much. God bless you. We appreciate your time.